Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second round of the 4 decades of Imola. Tonight we are racing in 1988, a good 15 or 13 years actually from the previous round set in 1975, so a bit of an upgrade to the track, a bit of an update to the cars, and let's quickly go through the drivers' points as they stand after round 1 of the 4 decades of Imola, with Xeris leading the way after victory in the first round, takes 25 points. Goofball Antics in second place ahead of Brenton Foley. Sam Smith in fourth place behind him, with Roadhog unfortunately absent tonight, leading Berto in sixth place. Nether and Madbird in 7th and 8th place apiece. And behind them it is Josh Bagsy in 9th place. Rhodey rounding out the top 10, and then Tyrrell and Bad Apple yet to score. Bad Apple making his debut tonight. So moving on to the racetrack itself, let's take you around Imola in 1988 in a McLaren Honda as we go around this newly updated circuit. And we've just had a bit of a pause there on the video, but through to Tamburello, absolutely flat out in these cars. No problem at all, because they have a fair bit more downforce than the cars that we raced back in 1972. Down into Tosa, hard braking zone, no change there from the version of the circuit we used in 1972. Then up the hill towards Piratella. A little bit more grass on either side of the racetrack, so there's some margin for error, although the server damage has been turned up, so it could still be an attritional race. Down into Aqua Minerale, which has been turned into a chicane. Very, very tricky on those curbs, and then rising up over the top of a hill and towards this new addition to the circuit from 1972, which is the Variante Alta, the chicane at the top of the hill. Making our way downhill now towards the Ravazza underneath the bridge, and a very, very fast run, a little bit easier than it was in 1972. These two corners being squared off a little bit, but they certainly have the original character of the circuit, with camber on the entry and the exit of the corner. And then making our way to the final sequence of corners, these bus stop chicanes at the Variante Bassa, and coming across the line to complete a lap of the Imola circuit. So we're going to now head towards the end of this practice session, which still has 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. And our commentators tonight, myself, Stairs, and Matt Dunlop, as always, joins us in commentary. Welcome back, Matty.
Good evening, Stairs, and good evening, everybody watching at home, wherever you may be, to the second round of 4 decades of Imola here in the 1988 version of Imola and the Formula Classic mod for Automobilista. And I'm going to quickly run through the teams that all of our drivers are driving for tonight. We've got a few that have stayed the same from last time out, and a few that have changed, starting in order of how they currently sit in practice. Bad Apples is leading the way, deputising for Roadhog in the Ocella, and Roadhog is out due to a tendon issue. We can hopefully see him back behind the wheel soon. In second place, behind the wheel of the Ferrari once again, is Xeris in that number 27 there. Sam Smith is currently sitting in third in practice, driving the March, demarked by the Leighton House sponsorship, which the team was later known as, of course, in the 1990s. Brenton Foley is in the Arrows Megatron-powered car there. In fifth at the moment is Birdo, returning to the Lotus, now adorned by the bright yellow camel sponsorship there. Madbird is currently sitting in P6 in the Minardi. Then we have...
it's a Tyrrell, sorry. They do look very similar to the Minardi, and I did lead you astray before the broadcast. He is retaining his Tyrrell drive from round 1.
That is a Tyrrell indeed. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. 7th position at the moment is Goofball Antics in the McLaren with a minute to go, once again, in that famous 1988 McLaren piloted by Ayrton Senna. Nether returns to Williams with that Cannon Camel Nigel Mansell vehicle there. We see currently sitting in P8 in this practice session, with Fruity Ping making his debut, I believe, or at least the first time I've seen him in Apex Rear Wing in my couple of seasons commentating. He is behind the wheel of the Benetton, which of course made its appearance in 1986, I want to believe, after buying the Tolman team. So Tyrrell, the driver, not the team, is racing in the Minardi, as we discussed earlier, currently sitting in 10th in the practice standings. Josh Bagsy is in the Ligier, currently sitting in 11th position with Rodi in the Scuderia Italia, which can be differentiated from the Scuderia Ferrari by the big white stripes along the side of the cockpit. He is in 12th and last position, and that is all our runners for this race, as we see Rodi going through the Variante Bassa now, which is one of the trickiest parts of this circuit compared to the last time out, Stairs, as we're just running out the practice clock now.
Yeah, 1 second, there's no seconds, and that's it. They will maybe get a chance to finish the laps they're on if the server is feeling generous. But let's have a look at some of our new runners, and well, Bad Apple has just been shuffled down to 3rd place, but he was topping the timesheets as the track improved in the later stages of that practice session. But looks like Bad Apple's got some decent pace. Looking at Fruity Ping, he is indeed racing in his very first official Apex rear wing race. He's done a few practice races with the boys, but he is a driver who dates back to the Valhalla Gamer days, which was how Apex rear wing got started in earnest years and years ago. So he is an old friend of many of the field here tonight.
Well, it's great to have him back in, and it's great to have that new face in Bad Apples. Friendly to Sam Smith, from what I hear, one of the well-known members of the race department forums, who of course provide a lot of third-party support for the Automobilista software, for which we are very, very grateful indeed. And they're now starting to peel out for a 15-minute qualifying session. And those of you who are familiar with the process for at least the last couple of seasons of Apex Rear Wing will be familiar with the shootout style qualifying, but here in 4 decades of Imola, it's quite different. It's designed to match what was done with the Formula 1 qualifying of the era, and while the session won't be quite as long, it's a similar principle. You've got 15 minutes, get it on the track, put as many laps in as you want, or as many laps in as you can, and whoever posts the fastest time starts from pole position. Easy as that.
So a queue of cars already waiting at the end of the pit lane, headed by Sam Smith. Although Sam Smith was pulled over to the side, it looked like he was planning to let the cars behind him go through, but he hasn't done that, and he will lead out a queue of cars to begin this qualifying session. And just looking at the live timing, there has been about half the field make it onto the racetrack.
Yeah, so we've still got a couple of cars sitting in the pit lane, maybe putting some last-minute tweaks on their setups before they head out here. Switching to some qualifying tyres, maybe getting a bit more experience with those, as we do have those at our disposal for this event. So the qualifying tyre is much, much softer than the race tyre, of course, designed to get as much pace as possible out of one lap. But apart from that, they're not very useful, are they, Stairs?
No, well, they have set the tyre life at ×2 to match up with the race distance, which is a 50% distance race. But of course, that means that the qualifying tyre, which in real life in 1988 was only really designed to last for an out lap and a flying lap, they only last about 3/4 of a lap. And Sam Smith has gone out hard at the start of his out lap, so I would be surprised if his tyres don't fall apart towards the end of his flying lap, assuming that he has put on that very fast qualifying tyre.
It's going to make it interesting to see how these guys with these completely destroyed tyres handle themselves through the Variante Bassa, which Sam Smith is going through now. It's a very, very tricky sequence to get right because it's a very fast entry in 3rd gear, but you've got to get the weight in the right part of the car, and you don't have very much time to do it. You just got to tap the brake at the right time, throw the car into the start of the chicane, get it all settled, and jump on the brakes for the second half. But it's a very challenging sequence of corners, and the drivers so far have been handling it quite well, but it's going to prove to be an interesting place for some, not necessarily passing opportunities, but some making mistake opportunities that could see some drivers benefit.
Well, so far it's Tyrrell, the only driver who hasn't ventured out onto the racetrack. Every other driver is now either on their flying lap or their out lap, and Sam Smith will be the first man to give us a benchmark. A 16.2 to the first sector, and that's been followed by Fruity Ping with a 16.5. and Rodi going through with a 16.8. So Sam Smith so far going faster than anyone else.
We've got Brenton Foley coming up on the first sector split now, and he's at a 16.5. So he's around about the same par as Nether, I believe, at the moment. So not too shabby there. Everyone's still getting to grips with these vehicles, of course. So there's a bit to go as we see Fruity Ping's gone off into the fence and caused the local yellow flag at what I believe is the Aqua Minerale chicane.
Xeris has gone 2/10 slower than Sam Smith through the first sector as Sam Smith approaches the second part of the Ravazza corner. Big wiggle on the exit there. Are those tyres starting to fall apart for him? One more corner for Sam Smith and we'll see him set the first lap of this qualifying session, and that will give us a benchmark with which to compare everyone else. So what is it going to be for Sam Smith? It is a 1:28.1.
Great lap there from Sam Smith on what would have been very worn qualifying tyres, if indeed he was on those. We're just waiting to see the next vehicle come through now. I'm trying to figure out who it is.
Be Rody is about to finish.
It would be, but he's just spun out.
We're looking at Xeris, who is just coming out of Ravazza right now and hasn't been setting the timing screens alight. Bad Apple's gone fastest on the first sector and Xeris spins it. So that is not going to be a good lap for Xeris. Let's see what Bad Apple is able to do as he comes out of the Ravazza, and this was the spot where coming up to the spot, I should say, where we lost Xeris. Made it about 3/4 of the way around a lap. What did I say? How long those tyres last? 3/4 of a lap. Bad Apple.
That's what I was saying earlier. Bad Apple crosses the line 1:30.782, so he's 2.5 seconds off what Sam Smith was able to achieve. So the gap at the front is now 2.5 seconds. Birdo currently sits in second position with a lap time of 1:30.74.
And
We've got
Sam
Nether
Smith
sitting in fourth at the moment, and Sam Smith is still leading the way.
He's gone faster in the first sector again, so those tyres are not going away from him. I'm wondering if we're getting some Hollywood first sector times from some of the drivers running qualifying tyres. Sam Smith looks like he's backed out of it on this lap. Or no, maybe that's just the camera angle, beg your pardon. But nonetheless,
He's definitely backed out of it, indeed.
I was right the first time. So who else is on a good lap? We've got Bad Apple with another fastest sector.
Be interesting to see how he does this time around, because he was one of the drivers we saw who was able to make it through the Variante Bassa successfully. Of course, Xeris and Rody spinning out, and I'm still wondering if that's a consequence of those tyres. He had a big lock-up there, Bad Apple did, into that chicane. No, that's the Variante Alta. I'm looking at the wrong part of the track there. A few new chicanes have been dotted into this version of the circuit. Not quite yet the Tamburello and the Villeneuve chicanes, as we will see later on, but we do have chicanes at Aqua Minerale, the Variante Alta, and now, as we see, Bad Apple coming into the Variante Bassa. Third gear, send it straight in. Clip the curb, not too much. A little bit of curb on exit. Very, very neat and tidy there as he locks up a little bit on the run onto the main straight now. Let's see what his time's going to be. It's looking pretty good. He crosses the line, and he's provisionally second. He's moved up a spot, but he's still got a gap of 8.5 tenths to Sam Smith.
So just 6 times have been pumped in so far, with Sam Smith, Bad Apple, Berto, Nether, Bagsy and Rody being the only drivers to do so. Berto's currently on his outlap, and he was sat second before Bad Apple did. Oh, and Berto has just crashed on his outlap, so that will probably necessitate another trip to the pits. Bad Apple comes out of his garage to try again. 9 minutes left in this session. Plenty more time for plenty more action.
Yeah, we're just seeing Xeris. Oh, I'm looking at Xeris right now, going through the Variante Alta, I believe. Nope, that's the Aqua Minerale chicane. I've got to stop mislabeling my chicanes. I'm not doing a great job of this. And he's 1/10 off the pace through the second sector. So he's not looking too bad. And this is going to see how well he's able to take this third sector, because it's quite a hairy one as he now goes through the Variante Alta. Let's see if he can make up any time now. He was 0.099 off the pace through that second sector split. He's coming up a little bit of, I want to say, lap traffic now as he goes all the way back down to first gear with a little lock up through the Ravazza corners. And he's only got one more chicane to go before he comes across the start-finish line, does Xeris, in that number 27 Ferrari, which was piloted in its day by Michele Alboreto. Great job through the first half of the chicane there, all the way back down to first gear, misses the curb on the exit, but gets right enough close to the apex, so he's looking really good. He's going to cross the line. It's going to be a 1:27.992, and he's shot to provisional pole.
Terrific job from Xeris, pulling out a lap time, and his first qualifying lap of the session is good enough for provisional pole position. Who else is on a lap? We've got Nether coming through the Variante, and he has given up on that lap. So just as we cut to him, Xeris has gone straight back out for another lap. So he's not happy with what he's done. He's going to try and improve on it.
He's pitted. He's picked up a new set of qualifying tyres, and he's going to go right back out there because it looks like he knows where he can improve. He's got 7 minutes 33 to play with, so we've just passed the halfway mark in this session now. So we've still got a few more laps to get in, but every chance counts, because if you throw away a lap by spinning out on a corner inadvertently, that's a lot of time you've wasted there. So every single chance you get, you got to get out there and you got to make the most of it. The track's not going to improve or degrade too much over the course of 15 minutes, so the track conditions are going to be largely negligible. So you'll be able to set a fast lap time at pretty much any point in this session, and all the drivers are going to be making the most of that. We've got Bad Apple starting a flying lap now. Sam Smith is on the final sector now of his lap and is just under 2/10 of the pace of Xeris. So he's looking to get back that... Oh, it's his out lap? Oh, I'm mistaken then.
I do want to look at Goofball Antics, though, because he hasn't set a qualifying lap yet, and he is currently on one. He's 1.3 seconds off the pace, but he needs to put in a banker lap. Currently on target for about 3rd or 4th place. Probably more likely to be 4th place at this rate, unless he can find a bit more time on Bad Apple through the final sector. But it will be a good benchmark to get himself there, and then he can push hard on his final flyer. Well, he's gone deep there at the Ravazza, hasn't he?
He certainly has. The Ravazza was tripping me up quite a bit when I was having a go in practice as well. Goofball only appeared in the practice session earlier on with not much time left to go. He only posted his first time with 5 minutes left in that session, and it was only good enough for 7th spot in the final standings. He's not looking too great going around these corners. He's going to be a few seconds off the pace when he crosses the line. It's going to be a 1 minute 31.683, which is 7th once again. So Goofball's got a bit of work to do if he wants to make his way up the field and get that valuable practice in before the race starts.
Sam Smith is knocking on the door of improvement once more. He's about half a tenth off through the second sector split. Not much indeed. If he did make a mistake on his first run through the final part of the lap, he might be able to improve there. But he was up to the first sector, and he's starting to come across a bit of traffic. That's Fruity Ping in the Benetton just up ahead. Gets out of the way, but did Sam Smith hesitate on the throttle? We'll find out as he comes through into the Variante Bassa, attacking the corner. Looked very clean through there. Bit of a wiggle on the exit. Straight across the line. It is going to be a 128.2. Not good enough for Sam Smith. He stays second.
He's going back out once again, not wasting any time at all. He's thrown on a fresh set of tyres. He's speeding out of the pit lane, and he's trying to improve as well. While Xeris sits in the pit box, although he's got the exact same idea now. He's pulling out. He's looking to get another couple of laps in. And we've got Bad Apple, who's currently on a flying lap as well.
Yeah, he set a purple sector through the first sector. So let's see if Bad Apple can improve through the second sector. It looks like he's lost time, though. 3/10 off. That's where Xeris was so much stronger. It's interesting. I think that these drivers must have had a fairly different philosophy on setup, because the first sector, which is the start-finish straight pretty much all the way down to Tosa, is nothing but straight. So doing well there is basically to do with your gearing. Doing well everywhere else is to do with your handling.
Yeah, all these cars are designed to be identical per the restrictions of the racing series we're using here at Automobilista. The only difference is you'll be seeing other paint jobs and the setup changes that drivers make themselves. Bad Apple only manages 1 minute 29.496. That's almost half a second slower than Xeris' time, so he's quite far off the pace at the moment. But he's got a little bit more time to get himself up there, as Xeris is out on track now on his out lap.
Yep, so everyone else on the racetrack, Nebert, just making his way onto the circuit now. It's Bad Apple, Goofball Antics, and Josh Bagsy, the only drivers not on the racetrack right now. Josh Bagsy looks like he's happy with the 4 laps that he's done, much less than anyone else. Who's on a flyer? See if Birdo can improve.
Smith just starting his. Let's see where Birdo is at the moment.
He's up by 9/10 on his personal best. Currently sat down there in 7th. Very, very aggressive on the curbs through the Variante Alta chicane. Coming over the crest now, down towards the Ravazza. And let's have a look at where he's sitting right now. He's got a fair bit of improvement on this lap. If he can hold it together, that would slot him in around about Brenton Foley, probably 4th or 5th place, which would be a good improvement.
He's coming up to the final 2 corners now of the circuit. He's looking pretty good for his time so far. He might be a couple of seconds off the pace with that golden yellow number 1 Lotus car. 1 minute 29.615. That's 1.1 seconds up on his personal best, but still 1.6 seconds off Xeris' time. So Birdo's quite far off the pace at the moment, as we've got 2.5 minutes left in this qualifying session. Xeris is currently up on his first sector time. On his second sector time, I should say.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good for Xeris, although he gets a bit of grass on the tyres. Bit of a messy exit out of the chicane there. So Birdo, if he can find one more tenth of a second, he'll be ahead of Foley. Xeris has aborted that lap. I wonder if he got a track cut. He's going to come back out. There's 2 minutes left in the session, so they'll only get one more flyer. Birdo's also in the pits, so he's got to come out pretty soon if he wants to improve. And we'll scour the timing screens to see if there is anyone else on a flying lap. There isn't actually, believe it or not. So they're all running out there to get their last flying laps done. Birdo just coming out of the pits now. 1 minute 40 to go. He'll just get in there in time. Not a second too late.
That's half a strategy with this qualifying system here. Is you've got to pick your time to get that last lap out so you can get it just in the nick of time and give yourself just that little iota more to be able to put in a qualifying lap. And the draft isn't super important here, given that the track is now broken up by a few chicanes. There's not a huge amount of pace you can pick up through the first straight and the first corner on the run down into Villeneuve. So drafting won't be a huge factor in this session. It's quite hard because this field is a bit spread out with only 12 cars on track at the moment. It's pretty difficult for drivers to be able to get a draft. So drivers will be focusing on their talents alone to get themselves up the order.
Bad Apple with a marginal improvement on this lap, about 0.02 of a second up through the middle sector. So he's coming down to the Ravazza now, and we'll get a bit of a gauge. Currently sat in third place, but he needs to find a remarkable improvement to get any positional improvement. Currently 0.8 of a second, 0.9 of a second even down on the time set by Sam Smith in second place.
So we got Sam Smith looking pretty good as he goes through the first sector split. He's down a little bit on his best time so far. He's green through the first sector as he goes through the
he's absolutely gone deep. He's completely cooked it at wherever he was on the track. I believe that was the Aqua Minerale chicane. And Sam Smith is done. So Bad Apple did get across the line before the timer hit 0, so he will have another opportunity, but he's only up by 1/10. He needs to find more time than that to have any sort of gains. Let's see what Xeris can do. Can he improve on this lap? He was up again through the first sector split. Not on the overall fastest sector, which is held by Bad Apple, but on his own fastest sector. And again, 1/10 up through the second sector split.
Yeah, so he's looking pretty good at the moment. Doesn't have too far to go before he locks away this pole position. Time has now expired on this qualifying session, so the drivers will be facing the checkered flag when they come through now. The first driver to get there, I think, will be Tyrrell, but he's not going to be able to do much. I think he's already passed the checkered flag at this stage, and he's locked into 10th position, highest at the moment for himself. So Xeris is now coming towards the Ravazza corners. No, he's coming through the final chicane. I really got to stop getting those corners. Oh, that's a big slide there.
Yeah, through that bus stop at the Variante Bassa and across the line. I don't think he's going to improve. He's just happy that he's got provisional pole. He's 0.6 away. We're going to have Madbird and Rhodey come across the line in very short order, and they'll be the last two drivers to finish the lap. Rhodey has stayed in 12th place. Can Madbird improve? He does. He finds another position and jumps ahead of Nether into 6th place by just less than 1/10 of a second.
So just want to apologise to the viewers out there and to yourself, Stairs. I had some connection issues there that I had to try and resolve in the middle of that qualifying session. But I think we're good to go now, and that's why my commentary was a bit patchy, because I was trying to fill the gaps in while I wasn't having a screen to look at. So now the qualifying session is... Thank you very much. I tried my very best. And now the qualifying session's finished. Let's have a look at the standings quickly. Xeris is on pole position next to Sam Smith in the march. They've just vanished from the Automobilista screen, so I'm going to have to look at the live timing here. Bad Apple will qualify in 3rd with Brenton Foley in P4. Birdo is in P5 with Madbird having improved to 6th position, demoting Nether back to 7th. Goofball down to 8th position. That's uncharacteristically low for him. Fruity Ping in P9 in the Benetton. Tyrrell is in 10th. Josh Bagsy starting from 11th, and Rhodey is in 12th. And now we have a 10-minute warm-up session where drivers can get a little bit more practice with the track, which a few of them will probably need, namely Goofball Antics, I think, who's normally on par or fantastic around any circuit you put him on, but he's just having a little bit of a struggle trying to get familiar with these cars in this version of the circuit. So He's going to be making the most of these laps, and all the drivers will be using this session to practice standing starts as well.
Yeah, that'll be very, very important. Big change from one round to the next with these cars for Goofball Antics, going from the very low aero spec 1975 cars to the, albeit not as much aero as today, but still a fair bit of aero spec cars of 1988. Completely different beast. These cars look to be almost on rails. You can get a little bit sideways out of some of the corners, but it is completely different. I think the 1972 cars resemble DRM much more than they do 1988, and DRM, as we saw, was a very, very successful championship for Goofball Antics.
Yeah, I think Goofball Antics prefers the cars that don't really have as much wings and slicks sort of a setup and are more reliant on mechanical grip, or rather the lack of, in which they slide all over the place. He was quite successful, as you said, in the DRM Championship, just narrowly finishing in second at the last race there, having podiumed every single race of the series before that. And he also performed quite well in the Caterham series with a few podiums there and some good results. But aside from that, in some of the series with more grip than not, such as the Formula One series that we've had in the past, he's not been able to replicate consistently good results. So I want to say that he's not particularly well versed in these high downforce, high grip cars. And you wouldn't really expect a car from 1988 to have a huge amount of grip, and especially if you look at the front and rear wings on these vehicles and how primitive they are compared to modern day machines. But these things handle surprisingly well, especially compared to the 1975 cars we ran here 2 weeks ago, which you could barely hold at full throttle through the Tamburello corner. And now these 1988 cars will do it with relative ease.
That they will. It is absolutely not a challenging corner in these cars, whereas you had to have balls of steel to do that in 1975, and everything else going your way as well. We're just in the warm-up session right now. If you have joined us, Xeris claimed pole position from Sam Smith. What you're watching is not the beginning of the race. This is a practice start. A very, very important part of the race tonight will be the start. We saw Sam Smith get it all wrong in the first round when he got a drive-through penalty on the start for jumping the start. Didn't cost him as much as it might have in subsequent rounds, because there was barely no speed limit in the pit lane.
Yeah, that's something that drivers will want to be sorting out before we get to the later eras. I do believe the next race we have in 2 weeks' time is the 2005 spec Formula One machine. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Seth.
2001, not too far away though. Those cars were quite similar.
And then in 5 weeks from now, we've had a bit of a spin there. Yeah, that's Brenton Foley, who's rotated it on the start there. So Brenton Foley's another driver who says that he doesn't really fancy these wings and slicks cars very much, but he's still able to do quite well behind the wheel of them. So we'll have to see how he goes once he can get his wheels back on, and once he can get his vehicle back on the track. As we've already seen some attempts at practice racing at the front here, especially between Xeris and Sam Smith.
Yeah, a bit of a dress rehearsal from the front row, and they've been side by side for the entire first sector. Sam Smith getting the job done there into Piratella. If you've just joined us, just to make sure that you're not getting confused with the race, this is warm-up, so they've just done a practice start. Apart from Brenton Foley spinning around, and I don't know if he got any help, it was a clean practice start.
So don't worry if you just joined us and you thought you've missed the start of the race. We've still got 6 minutes and 22 seconds at the very least before we get underway. Big lock-up there from Xeris, who almost rear-ended Sam Smith there into the Variante Alta chicane. So he did a great job to recover there. We have got the damage turned up for this event, so that's going to be something that drivers have on their mind constantly, trying to stay out of trouble as much as they can.
You're just catching a replay of that lock-up, because we were seeing Berto nearly getting cleaned up by Brenton Foley a moment ago. When that lock-up occurred, so that is the replay of that moment. No harm done, though.
No harm done, and that's the beauty of these practice sessions, is you really can just get away with whatever you feel the need to. It's a great opportunity to test the limits of what the car can do without too many pressures just before the race starts, so you can keep those lessons fresh in your mind before you take to the start, and you can really get comfortable with how these cars handle, as we see the drivers lining up for a second practice start now. Brenton Foley hoping this one goes a little bit better for him.
Yes, I'm sure he would do. Some bit of reordering going on. We've got our eyes on goofball antics as everyone tries to find their spot on the grid. Can be a bit difficult sometimes in the warm-up session because the game does give you a little red box on the race start proper to tell you where to start from, but on the warm-up, sometimes it's a bit of guesswork.
Yeah, sometimes you'll have to frantically reach for your change camera angle button, try and find the one that sits on the front of the rear wing, or the front wing, I should say, and get it as close to that painted line on the ground as possible to replicate where you're going to be starting the race from. Some of the drivers might be wanting to angle their cars a little bit, as we've seen in the real-life Formula 1 of recent, where the driver will pull up on the grid with his car pointed dead at the apex of the first corner, just to get that little bit more of an edge and almost a psychological edge on the drivers behind him. You can see how his car's set up. Getting started, getting ready for a second practice start now. They're underway. Plenty of wheel spin, lots of smoke, and we've got Birdo and Goofball Antics off.
Yeah, one exited stage left, the other one exited stage right. And that was all she wrote for them. So let's hope that doesn't happen. This is the turbo lag. The cars, I think Bagsy was probably the one who put it best in practice. They don't spin out immediately when you jam your foot on the throttle, but a moment later, and you've swapped ends faster than you can blink. And that is turbo lag.
It's like when you stub your toe on a piece of furniture and you have to wait 3 seconds for the paint to kick in.
Yeah, don't do that. You'll be dead before you know you've hurt yourself. So, quite nice time of the day, this warm-up session, actually. Oh, a bit of contact there with Nether and Xerus. So, let's hope they're getting all these little cobwebs out of themselves before. We saw quite a frantic round one, didn't we, Matty?
We certainly did, as we see Brenton Foley rotating up the grass there. Yeah, it's been quite a while since a lot of these drivers were in cars, of course. We've had a few of them participating in the Suzuka 3 Hour, but these races that we see now, the 4 decades of Imola, are generally 2 weeks apart as opposed to a regular programming, which is 1 week apart, as Tyrrell goes for a big move around the outside, which is now the inside, into the Ravazza. Doesn't end too well for him. Loses a couple of theoretical spots there that would be racing positions if this was the race. This is still the warm-up session, don't you worry about that. But I reckon because we've got these delays between races, and especially the differences in these cars here, you need to spend a lot more time, or these drivers need to spend a lot more time getting familiar with how the vehicles work.
So another warm-up start. Looks like Roddy's completely overshot. I'm not actually sure what it is that he's doing.
Bags is sitting sideways on the front grid and he's lost his front wing.
I don't know how that happened. We didn't actually see that happen. That's a bit bizarre.
It's all fun and games until it suddenly isn't.
Yeah, it looks like they're not doing the warm-ups start as uniformly as they did prior. So we've got no Sam Smith this time. I think we've got a couple of cars in the pits. Madbird at last check was still sat in the garage.
So it looks like Josh Bags is going to try and take this practice to start without a front wing. Gets off to a great start, but I don't know how long he's going to be able to keep that position for, as Birdo has a big wobble there, so he's still getting to grips with this turbo lag as well off the start. And a few of the guys just sitting in the garage at the moment, while we've got a couple more sitting on the grid waiting to go.
Oh, big crash in the background there. That was
taking
Bagsy.
their own time, as Josh Bagsy and Fruity Ping have a massive wreck there.
Yeah, I can
Fruity
see
Ping's got
Bagsy.
3 wheels on his wagon.
I can see Bagsy's, Fruity Ping's suspension, rear wing, and the tyres just got smacked over the fence by someone driving into it. So
what's happened is Fruity Ping just stopped dead on the circuit at the end of Tamburello, and he's been punted straight over the fence by the rapidly approaching Josh Bagsy. So that would have hurt in real life, I imagine.
While that was happening, Xerus was concentrating on another race start. He drove clear of the shenanigans, stopped, and did another practice start. So sensible from the man who is, I've lost count, I think a 7 times Apex Rear Wing champion, and has won the last round of this championship.
He's got 119 races under his belt. I think he is one of the OG participants of Apex Rear Wing.
He is.
He's been here for every single season. 7-time champion, as you mentioned, with 73 race wins, 48 pole positions, 64 fastest laps. And of those 119 races, 93 of them have been podium positions. and 107 of them he's finished in the top 5. So he is, by far and large, almost our greatest competitor in the Apex Rear Wing category, and he certainly showed that last time out in the 1975 version of this race when he completely and utterly dominated it.
And somehow managed to steal the DRM championship at the death from goofball antics, doing another practice start. So the man is relentless. You can never count him out, whether it's in a race or in a championship. And that is certainly something that makes him an incredible competitor. He brakes later than anyone else. He carries more speed than anyone else. And it's almost like he's got an extra gear.
It is, isn't it? He's just got this innate ability to be able to drive every single vehicle you stick him in. And it really is like he's on a world of his own. So the practice timers tick down to 0, and we are now in race mode. So we've got a formation lap to start this off the grid, and then we've got 30 laps of pure 1988 racing around Imola in the Formula Classic cars. I'm very excited for it, Stairs. Now, this is around the time we normally do our race picks, of course, just before we announce the grid before the start of the race. It's pretty hard to go past Xeris, isn't it?
It is. If the man has a weakness, it's strategy, and that's probably not going to be a factor tonight because these cars in real life didn't really have strategic pit stops. They may be pitted for tyres if the ones that they put on at the start of the race didn't last long enough, but it wasn't the sort of thing we see today where we talk about 1 and 2 stop strategies. So I think Xeris, if he has a weak point, it's not going to rear its ugly head tonight.
So we're just seeing everyone line up on the grid now. I don't think we're waiting on anybody else in the garages. So we're about to get underway for our formation lap. We're just taking off now, and let's go through the starting grid for race 2 of our 4 Decades of Imola series. Starting from pole position, we've got Xeris in the Scuderia Ferrari number 27. Sam Smith lines up on the grid next to him in the March car, the Leighton House neon blue there you can see, with a gap of just under 0.2 of a second in the qualifying session to him. Bad Apple, a newcomer to Apex Rear Wing, having been invited over by Sam Smith, is doing sensationally so far in his first outing, qualifying 3rd on the grid, just over a second behind what Xeris was able to achieve. Next to him on the grid, we've got Brenton Foley in the Arrows car there, in position number 4, ahead of Berto in the Lotus. Car number 1, the bright yellow camel-sponsored vehicle there, starting from P5 on the grid. Madbird is starting from P6 in the Minardi. Sorry, that's the Tyrrell. I get that wrong every single time, and we'll continue to do so for the remainder of this broadcast.
It's like they were borrowing this. It's like, have you finished painting your car? Can I borrow your tin of paint?
It's the Minardi, the Tyrrell, and the Ocella that all share the exact same colour scheme, which is going to be excruciating for me in this qualifying broadcast, in this race broadcast rather, but wish me the best of luck. I'll do what I can. In P7, we've got Nether in the Williams, which is one of the easiest cars to spot because it's a legendary paint job in Formula 1 history.
Red 5.
With that red 5 and Nigel Mansell's helmet behind the wheel. Behind him, we've got yet another legend of the sport, perhaps the most iconic looking Formula 1 car in history. It is the 1988 McLaren with Ayrton Senna behind the wheel, piloted in this race by Goofball Antics, starting very low for his standards in P8. Fruity Ping, making his first competitive debut in Apex Rear Wing once again, is in P9 in the Benetton there, with Tyrrell behind him in the Minardi. So Tyrrell, the driver, in the Minardi, the car, in P10. We've got Josh Bagsy in 11th, who was missing his front wing for most of that warm-up session, and actually set the fastest speed trap time in qualifying with 307.1 kilometers an hour, which was a full 6 k's an hour faster, or a 3 k's an hour faster rather, than anybody else was able to manage. I imagine he probably lost his front wing at some stage like he did in practice, but he might just be a very quick driver with a setup geared to his liking. You'll see that his rear wing element is actually quite a bit smaller than everybody else's, so he's going for a low downforce, high-speed setup. Let's see if it pays off. It didn't do so in qualifying. It might do so in the race. And bringing up the rear of the field is Rody, our former co-commentator for Season 7 of the Apex Rear Wing Caterhams, in the Scuderia Italia, as they now line back up onto the starting grid to get this race underway, Stairs.
Supremely done, Matt. And the cars are just finally making their way onto the grid. The front row has been stationary for about 30 or 40 seconds now, with Rody and Bagsy in the back row just coming to a stop now. So it's round 2 of the 4 Decades of Imola. It's 1988. We're waiting for the lights. And as Murray Walker would say, we are go. Great start there from the front row as they make their way through it. Xeris in the lead, followed by Sam Smith. Sam Smith, though, putting Xeris under pressure, and it's a long run down to the first corner. Xeris going for the defensive line. Brenton Foley has had a great start up into third place behind them, but look how much they've gapped everyone else. And it is Xeris who holds onto the lead into Tosa.
Everyone's looking pretty neat and tidy at the moment as we see Madbird going off the track there a little bit in the background. So there's a little bit of a gap forming now between the top 5 and the rest of the cars behind them. And Sam Smith, like we saw in one of those practice starts, is all over the back of Xeris. But it is Xeris who is leading the charge at the moment as they head down towards the Aqua Minerale chicane.
And we've got a move going on for the 6th and 7th place between Madbird and Nether. In fact, that's
Bad Apple in P5.
That is Bad Apple, who's had a terrible start. We've already been caught out by the Minardi and and Tyrrell looking completely identical. So that is a bit tricky, but looks like Madbird has held on to 6th place, and Nether didn't get the job done in the end there.
Please file all complaints to the drivers for picking these teams.
Brenton Foley's gone off.
Runs wide at Ravazza, drops a spot to Birdo, who's now up to P3. But Sam Smith is all over the back of Xeris once again. He's not let him go just yet. They're going to complete lap 1, neck and neck pretty much, as they come through the final corner to start lap number 2. Bit of a wobble there from Sam Smith on the exit of that bend, which means Xeris is able to stretch his legs a little bit. He's already pulling a nice gap there ahead of Sam Smith, but Sam's got the draft through Tamburello. He's going to see if he can get up close to him through the Villeneuve corner. The Villeneuve Kink, I should say, into the Tosa corner. He's looking, have a look now. He's going to be going around the outside of Villeneuve. He's got the right position. Can he do it? No, he's going to have to tuck behind. Big lockups from both of them. And that's a great bit of driving, but unfortunately fruitless for the time being. Xeris is still up the front because Sam Smith just wasn't able to get far enough close to him.
Equally fascinating battle going on behind for 3rd and 4th place, with Birdo having made his way past Brenton Foley when Foley had a bit of a mistake. And, well, doing quite well. He's found his way up to speed in these cars. He said last week that Formula 1 isn't his cup of tea and open wheelers were going to be a struggle for him. Well, he got onto the podium last round. He's having a few issues at the moment, though, just through the middle part of the lap. He has dropped a lot of time to Birdo, and that has put him a bit under pressure from the poor starting Bad Apple, looking to recover.
We've already had a pit stop from Rody in P12. Lost his front wing at one point in the melee of the first lap. Came in for a new front wing. Took a couple of fresh tyres as well. So he's back out on track. And that's another off-track. Birdo and Brenton Foley going off. So Bad Apple gets 2 spots in one corner. Moves his way up into 3rd place. And Nether slots his way up through into 6th place. Madbird slots his way up into 5th place. So a huge shuffling of the order here on lap 2 at Imola. It's all happening here in the midfield, and Ravazza is catching a lot of people out, which is pretty unexpected if you ask me. I thought the chicanes would be getting a lot of people, particularly Aqua Minerale, where I saw a lot of people spinning out in practice. But Ravazza is a little bit narrower than you think, especially once you go through that first bend. They're just nowhere near enough tarmac as you think there's going to be once you get to that first corner. Birdo going defensive into Tosa, with Madbird having an incredible run down to the first corner there. Nether is in behind trying to buy into this battle, but Birdo is struggling a little bit, having lost out quite badly at the Ravazza, but Brenton Foley losing out much worse. So this is all allowing Bad Apple to streak away in 3rd place. Yeah, he certainly is. He's doing a great job, but he's still got a gap of around about 7 seconds to Sam Smith in front of him. And it's going to be quite some time before he's able to catch up to those two, unless they get tangled up or make mistakes of their own. So it's a lonely race at the moment for Bad Apple, but he's got Birdo, Madbird, and Nether right behind him, with Brenton Foley pretty close to that pack as well. So it's somewhat of a 4-car battle here, but it's fanning out a little bit as they come into Ravazza. Let's see if anybody makes any errors here. Bit of a lock-up from Birdo, but he keeps all 4 wheels on the tarmac. Nether's off, so Brenton Foley is as well. Brenton Foley is on struggle street in that part of the track. He's not making up any time there at all. He'll be wanting to get that ironed out as soon as he possibly can, because Goofball is right behind him. Someone's gone spearing off. Who was that? Just saw that ahead of Madbird. That was that was Birdo making a bit of a mistake at the Variante Bassa, but he has maintained his position. You would expect that, well, that's one of those situations of he hasn't actually gained a place, but he's failed to lose one, because Madbird was right up his chuff. He's got the slipstream now on the way down to Tosa, and he doesn't know which way to go, right and left, had to get out of the throttle,
Birdo jinks to the left, and Madbird's going to drive around the outside of him and gets the job done.
Birdo stayed rock steady through there, and I thought he was going to have the corner, but Madbird was just crazy enough to get it done around the outside.
Oh, big move going on here down at Aqua Minerale. I thought that Sam Smith was going to go into the lead of the race, but Xerus managed to hold him off. Looks like a bit of an off-track excursion for Xerus. Brought Sam Smith into it there, and the battle for the lead is as hot as the midfield battle.
So it's a great scrap that we're seeing here between these two at the front as well. We've got to remember to keep tabs on them every now and then, because we've got a battle at the front here that's crucial, absolutely crucial, between Xerus, of course, and Sam Smith. And we've got these midfield scraps that are popping up left, right, and centre. Goofball has gotten ahead of Brenton Foley, who's now sitting in 8th position. So Brenton Foley's having a shocking time.
Yeah, he's not loving it at the moment. So Xerus, can he hold on to the lead? Sam Smith putting him under an enormous amount of pressure right now.
It's great fun to watch. The gap peters out to around about a second as they cross the start-finish line to start lap number 5 here. So they're going to widen the gap between themselves just a little bit as they go through this faster part of the circuit. I gave that word a few times and got to it eventually. As they go through as they go through Villeneuve down to the Tosa corner, where we saw some daring moves earlier from Madbird and Birdo. But it's line astern for Xerus in 1st position and Sam Smith in P2 at the moment as they keep fighting around the circuit. Let's have a look where we are sitting.
Losing spot to Goofball Antics, but trying his best to get it back. And it looks like Goofball Antics has got that spot done if he can make the apex down at Tosa.
That's Brenton Foley in the arrows there, sitting in P8. So Goofball Antics in the Marlboro McLaren there. The Ayrton Senna bright yellow helmet there is sitting in 7th position where he qualified. So, no, he qualified in 8th actually, I should say. So he's made his way back up to 7th position. But he's got a lot of work to do. He's 20 seconds off the lead, so he's going to really have to push himself and take all these lessons he's learned. And he's really skipped over the curbs there, so if he keeps doing that, he's going to struggle.
Yeah, he had a good start initially, survived some of the early chaos and got his way up, but now he's back down again. And so it's been an up and down race for Brenton Foley, which was characteristic of a lot of his DRM appearances.
It certainly was, yeah. Brenton Foley is always great to watch in qualifying because he'd always get the back end out in the shootout laps, as we see.
That was Brenton
Birdo
Foley
there having a massive moment.
I was looking at Brenton Foley locking up. Sam Smith has just set the fastest lap of the race, so if we rejoin that battle for the lead of the race, that is one that continues to rage on. Sam Smith not letting Xerus go at this stage of the race.
No, absolutely not. He's doing a great job holding onto the back of that red Ferrari there. So that's going to be a great battle to see. And speaking of great battles, Birdo's holding off Nether as they go into Villeneuve. Nether takes the inside line. They touch wheels there. Sends Birdo right to the inside of what is Tosa now. And he doesn't get the job done. Nether's able to shoot around the outside lane because I think there's a little bit of banking at Tosa. So Nether is able to make his way up into 5th position as a result of that move. But I don't know how happy Birdo is going to be about that.
Just catching a replay of that because I was trying to resolve a technical issue while that was happening, so I was a little bit late on switching to the camera, but there is the replay for you there. So back on the leaders. Xerus once again having to go a little bit defensive as Sam Smith is right on his tail. Looks like Sam Smith is just a bit happier with his car right now than Xerus is with his.
Yeah, he certainly is, but Sam Smith is all over the back of him, trying to find every single way he can to get past him, but there's just no passing opportunities at this part of the circuit. So he's going to have to wait a little bit longer, perhaps down to Tosa where we saw those moves earlier on. Big wobble from Sam Smith, though. He's really struggling with that exit of the Variante Bassa.
That is really what's costing him opportunities to pass. It really is.
He's not able to get the draft through Tamburello and on the run into Villeneuve. So that's really taking big chunks out of what he's able to do. He catches up in the 2nd and 3rd sectors, but it's really that 1st sector where he loses a lot of time because he gets such a big wobble out of the Variante Bassa before the lap starts. So that's something Sam's going to have to work on out throughout this race, and we're almost at 1/3 distance, so he doesn't have much time left to do it.
Happens quick. Another battle that appears to be happening right now, well, it was looking like it would happen on this lap, but Goofball Antics had a bit of a moment out of the last corner, but Goofball Antics has been closing Birdo down and is certainly looking the goods after a poor qualifying effort. And I think that he will continue to move up from where he is in 7th. Top 5 is not out of the question for Goofball Antics tonight.
Definitely not. He's less than 4 seconds behind Nether at the moment in that Williams in P5. So bit of a gap from Nether up to Madbird, another gap of about 5 seconds. So Goofball just has to keep plugging away, getting as close as he can to Birdo and to Nether. Birdo we've seen make a couple of mistakes so far. So it's not out of the question, like you said, for Goofball to get up there. And he's got Brenton Foley in tow. So I'd really like to see Brenton Foley get up there as well. But as we've seen in previous Apex Rearing races, he can be very rapid on the pace, but he can make the occasional mistake and lose it all. So that's something he's going to have to be careful with. Back to the leaders now. The gap is a little bit smaller at the front, around 0.7 of a second. So he's not lost as much time through that final chicane as Sam Smith to Xeris, but
no, he was
he's
very
still
careful.
not close enough.
Well, he's starting to get the benefit right here, but the way the corner just goes, it sort of forces you to go single file just where you need to be 2 by 2, unless you want to be in the marbles, and that seems to be what's costing Sam Smith, because you can't quite get enough overlap before that part of the racetrack where you kind of have to yield unless you want to go firing off into the gravel trap at Tosa. But Aqua Minerale, Sam Smith is all over Xeris. He seems to have so much more confidence into that part of the racetrack. The curbs, of course, very, very slippery here. And again, into the Variante Alta, Xeris is completely overrun by Sam Smith, who can't get the job done there. It's single file.
He is. It's great to see in what are virtually identical cars here in this race, the differences in racing style and the differences in ability as we see Xeris have a big mock up
Brent Foley's gone spinning around at the chicane, and I think there was someone else involved. I saw Nether going off, so it looks like Nether's had a bit of a moment. He's dropped positions. Goofball Antics has made up a few spots, and here is the replay of what happened to Brenton Foley. Doesn't really tell us anything there. There was a bit of lag involved, and there was Nether looking like he was trying to avoid Brenton Foley, but that doesn't tell us how Nether lost those spots in the first place. A bit strange, that one.
Well, Goofball Antics is now up to P6.
Good job.
So he's benefited quite nicely. We've got a yellow flag in front of him. That appears to be Rody, who's spun out on the run into the Variante Bassa. So he's a lap down already. So he's out of the way. He's not part of this battle. So Goofball Antics is still in P6, holding off Nether in P7. But he's got a gap of 8.5 seconds or thereabouts, up to 9 seconds now to Birdo.
Nether's trying to make his way through.
To Nether.
Yeah.
As Nether goes around the outside at Tamburello, is he going to be able to hold on? I'm not entirely sure. Goofball seems to have gotten ahead through Tamburello, but Nether is not giving up yet. We've seen his efforts so far through this part of the circuit. He's stuck right on the back bumper of that McLaren there. He's going to have a big lunge into Tosa. Pulls out into the outside lane, shuts the door, parks his car on the inside, and he's going to lose a lot of speed there. So they're going to be side by side on the exit of this corner, and it is going to be a left-hander next. So Goofball Antics is going to win this battle for now.
Yeah, well, just didn't get the traction out of Tosa. Nether sent it, and it was a great move. He just didn't quite have the traction on the exit of the corner. If he'd managed to stay side by side with Goofball Antics up to Piratella, then he might have been able to force the issue on the inside there, but it was Goofball Antics who won out in the end, so Nether will have to try again.
Meanwhile, back at the front, this battle is still raging on, and Sam Smith is still losing oodles of time through the final chicane there. The gap was a full second at the start-finish line there between Xeris and Sam Smith.
Yeah.
So
which doesn't tell the story of this race.
It really doesn't, unfortunately, because they're just chalk and cheese when it comes to the parts of the track where they're good at and where they're not so good at. So in the latter half of this lap, on the run into the Aqua Minerale chicane, for instance, you'll see Sam Smith get right up on the back of Xeris, but because the track is marbling up so much, as you mentioned earlier, it's going to be a little bit harder as the race goes on to be able to pull off those daring outside passes. So
Xeris has managed to keep the gap on this lap a bit better than he has on previous laps, so it is still sitting at around about 0.7 of a second as they make their way down the hill. And Sam Smith is going to have to try a little bit harder. I think he'd give anything to be a little bit faster out of the final chicane in exchange for being a little bit slower through the other chicanes where he is much faster than Xeris.
And that could even be down to setup differences between these two cars. Of course, they do have somewhat open setup abilities in what these guys are able to do with the cars. I'm not sure if they're able to modify the the turbo boost here on these vehicles. They probably bump it all the way up as much as they can because I'm not sure if mechanical failures are turned on.
Good question. Don't believe they are. Damage is set to 50%. We're set at 25 in the first round because we were worried that it might be a bit too attritional with those 1975 cars, but so far no retirements in this race. 1/3 distance, and Xeris leads Sam Smith by half a second. Bad Apple having a bit of a lonely race in his opening outing for 3rd place and would join quite a short list of drivers to get a podium in their first Apex Rear Wing race. Madbird is in 4th place, also having a bit of a lonely run, but he'd be happy if he can finish there right now. Birdo holds down 5th place ahead of Goofball Antics, who's starting to gap Nether a little bit at the moment. Bretton Foley, another driver having a bit of a lonely race after a few issues earlier on. Fruity Ping in 9th place, Tyrrell in 10th. Josh Bagsy is the last man on the lead lap, and Rody 1 lap down.
Yeah, I don't think that low downforce setup is working too well for Josh Bagsy. He's a 1 minute 27 off the lead of this race, which is effectively an entire lap. There's not too far until Xeris and Sam Smith are able to catch up to the back of him now, so that's something to keep in mind. Josh Bags has actually rotated his car through the Basta chicane, so he's lost even more time and he'll become lap traffic very, very soon.
Just catching a replay of that. Don't worry, you're not missing anything on the other screen. I've got my eye on it. If anything happens, we'll be sure to flick to it. I'm a little bit worried that something might happen, actually, as they were going through the Variante Bassa. Sam Smith was very, very close indeed. And just finishing off on that replay. Too much curb there for Josh Bagsy. So this is the closest battle on the racetrack.
The battle for 1st and 2nd. We are still watching that one, as it is, as you said, currently the closest battle that we have at the moment. It's a great battle, but it's starting to become deja vu for every single lap we've seen so far.
It is.
The exact same maneuvers are taking place every single lap. These guys know these cars and these setups down to a T, and it looks like they're milking every last iota out of these vehicles and what they can do with them. Sam Smith's going to catch right up to the back of Xeris here as they run through, I forget what that corner is called. Piratella, that's the one. Into Aqua Minerale chicane, but he's a little bit further off the back of Xeris now, so I think Xeris is getting a little bit more comfortable with this sequence of corners as well.
And that is very Xeris. You think you've got him somewhere, and then he figures out how to do the corner. Like, I can go through there about 10 kilometers an hour faster now, just by making a very minor adjustment. But he was a little bit slow out of that corner, and that's going to force Xeris to take the inside line on the run down to the Ravazza. It's Sam Smith who's marginally ahead, but he has to back out of it as they go around that bend and into the Ravazza. Sam Smith isn't able to get the job done, and Xeris holds on again. So good under brakes, and Sam couldn't do the work. Now, we've just had Goofball Antics going off the racetrack at the Aqua Minerale chicane, which has put Nether right back on his rear wing.
Yeah, they were so close to making contact, the first and second drivers there, as we see Goofball Antics to the course. Oh, he's rotated, and he's going to hit the fence. He's touched the fence. So
that's 2 mistakes in as many corners there for Goofball Antics. Let's cut back to the action for the lead, because it's Sam Smith going down the inside on the way down to Tosa. He's getting punchy. He's making a move for the lead. It's going to be Xeris on the outside. Sam Smith doesn't manage to get the traction. This was the same thing that we saw from Nether and Goofball Antics a lap ago, and somehow, once again, Xeris hangs on, and they go through Piratella with Xeris in the lead and Sam Smith very, very close behind. Now, we've still got Goofball Antics stuck by the side of the racetrack, so after spinning, I think he might have stalled the car. It's not moving.
Yeah, he's still right there. He's got nothing at all. His engine appears to have switched off, so he just parks on the side of the track there. He's got nothing coming up on his display there. He's got Fruity Ping running off the track and Rough at the same spot there. So we're just seeing Sam Smith and Xeris run past that general area now as they have another run down into the Ravazza section. So Sam Smith's not going to have a lunge here, but it was a great move from him through Tosa. So he's all over the back of Xeris again through Ravazza, but I fear that Sam Smith may have shown his cards a little bit too early there. Now Xeris knows what Sam Smith can do through Villeneuve into Tosa. Oh, big wobble from Xeris. He's around!
He spun it around! Now, was that contact with Sam Smith, or was that a mistake?
It wasn't. I was on board with Sam Smith. There was no contact whatsoever. That was a mistake that Xeris made all on his own, and it just goes to show how good Sam Smith is at piling on the pressure, because now Xeris is 4.5 seconds back in second position.
Oh. Well, there is the replay of the race leader, Xeris, making an uncharacteristic mistake. And the fortunes of our podium sitters from last round are changing in very, very quick moments, because we've had Goofball Antics retire from the race. He finished second last week. We've had Xeris spin out of the lead, and he won last round.
You don't see that very often from Xeris at all. He's one of the most flawless drivers we have on the Apex Rear Wing circuit, and that's a completely uncharacteristic mistake from him. So I was not expecting to see that at all. I was really hoping for a great battle between these two drivers to carry on for the rest of the race. As you see, Josh Bagsy rotating his car in an effort to get out of the way of Sam Smith trying to lap him, and Sam Smith had to take evasive action there. But he's still pressing on, and we've got, look at the gap that Xeris has brought up now. He was about 4 seconds behind. Then he's already made up half a second on that gap. So Xeris is really on the charge. He's trying his absolute darndest to get back up to where Sam Smith is at the lead of the race here, but he's going to have to be careful not to make that same mistake again. I reckon his tyres are starting to fall off just a little bit.
We've got Fruity Ping and Bagsy are actually locked in a battle, a lap down, and they've got Rody trying to unlap himself from them because he's 2 laps down, and that's a bit of a messy little battle there. But that moment that you drew our attention to a few moments ago with Sam Smith, we saw actually Sam Smith lost a bucket load of time as he tried to lap Bagsy, so he could have had a bigger margin. It's now 3 seconds, and we are at the half distance point in this race. There's plenty of time for Xeris to get that win back.
So Goofball Antics is our first retirement of this race. He has DNF'd as a result of that spin and collision that he suffered earlier on, which is a shame to see. So he is out of the car, and there are 11 runners remaining in this race, with Sam Smith currently leading them by 3 seconds to Xeris, who's made up another half a second, almost made up a whole second since the last time he checked his gap. So he's going to be on the back of Sam Smith pretty soon.
Yeah, Sam Smith has lost his carrot. I think that was one of those things that we talked about in DRM commentary, that he does like a carrot, something to aim for. Or we just had a bit of a moment there for Xeris over the chicane. He's gone very deep, so he is pushing very, very hard indeed. Xeris certainly has a carrot right now, and he can see that right ahead of him. But I just wonder whether Sam Smith is just now pacing himself, and having spent so many laps behind Xeris, is just struggling to find himself a bit of a rhythm again.
Xeris had to throttle off there a little bit because Tyrrell ran off the track on the exit of Rivarza, but Sam Smith had a big wobble into the Variante Bassa as well, with a lock-up as well. So Sam Smith's losing pace as well. They've both lost a little bit of speed here and there, and the net result is they're both keeping the same gap that they were before they reached the Rivarza section. So it's around about 3 seconds now between those front 2 guys. And yeah, as we were saying, Sam Smith really appreciated a carrot in front of him during the DRM series. And obviously, as we saw in the first half of this race, when he was glued to the back of Xeris, matching pace with him all the way around. And now that he is ahead and Xeris is about 3 seconds behind, the gap is coming down at an astronomical rate.
Well, Sam has responded 16.3 in the first sector, and Xeris did a 16.4, although having said that, the first sector isn't based on driver skill, it's based on car setup. So Sam Smith, let's see what he can do through the first sector and follow the middle sector, and follow Xeris's time in response. It's a 29 flat for the middle sector for Sam Smith. So as we watch Xeris now coming through out of the chicane, it is a 28.8, so chips away another 1/10.5 through there.
Yeah, he's going to be back on the rear diffuser of Sam Smith before we know it, folks. And Sam Smith really struggling to keep the pace there out on his own. And he's copping the curbs a little bit there, as is Xeris through the Variante Bassa. But the gap is under 2 seconds now. As they cross the line, it's going to be around about 1.8 seconds, probably getting closer. And we've got a drive-through penalty for Tyrrell, which I imagine will be for breaching track limits.
Must be. Trying to think where they would be. I suppose the chicanes. But generally, you don't want to cut the chicanes too much with these cars. So Sam Smith, the gap fluctuates quite a lot. It went out to went down to 1.5 seconds, back out to 2 seconds as they got to the end of the straight, and it comes down and then it goes back up. So it does fluctuate quite wildly. But Sam Smith lost a huge amount of time under braking in that final chicane. That is where he was losing the time to Xeris when he was following Xeris. So that seems...
Oh, Brenton Foley's off at the Aqua Minerale, and he was very close to making contact with either of those two leaders there. But they've all avoided danger. But Brenton Foley is now down in P7.
Yeah, it's not been Brenton Foley's night. Podium sitter in round 1. He was another one of the podium sitters who hasn't had a stellar night so far. And we're going to get a brand new bunch, apart from Xeris, of podium sitters in round 2. Bodes very well for Xeris' championship bid for this 4 decades of Imola.
Certainly does, as it always is with Apex Rear Wing. Consistency is the name of the game. To finish well, first you must finish, and crossing the line and scoring points is always crucial in maintaining your spot at the top of the championship. Indeed, we saw in Apex Rear Wing Season 8 when Goofball Antics was leading the championship until the very last race, because he was on the podium for every single one of these races until he DNF'd and crashed out in the final race, enabling Xeris, who we see now in P2, to snatch it at the death. And it really goes to show you have to be on the ball every single time you jump in the car on the Apex Rear Wing server.
Tyrrell getting another drive-through penalty. That's unfortunate for him. And another battle that's starting to develop is Berto closing down Nether at rather a fast rate. On the previous lap, though, there wasn't too much of a difference, but that gap was around about 4 or 5 seconds when I last looked at it. It's now only about 1 second, and it was a little bit less than that, but Berto made a little bit of a mistake into the Ravazza and went deep. Cost himself a little bit of time there.
We've got Madbird still sitting in P4 at the moment, trying to get past Josh Bagsy, which he's done now. It was stuck behind him for quite some time there, with Josh Bags being lap trapping, of course, so Madbird would have been keen for him to get out of the way so Madbird can get back onto it and post some laps. He's not really battling at the moment. He's got Bad Apples in 3rd position, almost 18 seconds ahead of him, with Nether around 12 seconds behind him on the road. So Madbird's
keep it on the road. He'll be good for 4th
right.
place. He was running in 4th at one stage last round, but it all fell apart towards the end in what was his 100th race for Apex Rear Wing. This one now being his 101st. I believe we've got another drive-through penalty for Tyrrell. So that's that unfortunate folly of once you do get one drive-through penalty for track cuts, you then invariably get more for every single violation after that one.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because you get, I think, 4 track cuts before you receive your first penalty, and every single track cut after that will earn you an additional penalty as well. So Tyrrell just slammed it into the wall on the run into pit lane, is sitting at 96 kilometers an hour, just touching the speed limit at the moment, so he'll be careful not to get himself a drive-through penalty for exceeding the speed limit, and he'll cop blue flags on the way out. So he's sitting down at 8th position at the moment, hasn't lost any spots as far as I can tell. Or maybe he has. Fruity Ping is currently up to 7th position now, so I think he has lost a spot.
And Bagsy's only about 5 seconds behind him based on our live timing, so that... unfortunately, it was quite a good run for Tyrrell. 7th place would have been a very, very good result for him. So, unfortunately, the track cuts becoming a bit of a problem for him, and something that I'm sure he'll iron out with experience, but no doubt better results are coming his way. Nether is starting to come under pressure from Berto again, who's just closed up to within 1 second now.
It'll be interesting to see how this battle between Nether and Berto compares to the battle that we saw in the first third of the race between Xeris and Sam Smith, which will be resuming quite shortly. But now we've got Berto all over the back of Nether into the Aqua Minerale chicane. So Berto is very, very late into that complex of corners there and is able to make up quite a bit of time as a result. But Nether is able to get the power out of that complex of corners and really charge down the road towards the Variante Alta. So they've got varying lines here. Berto's really mounted the curb through that section of the circuit, and now the gap is under half a second between these two, and he's going to get a little bit of draft on the run down into Ravazza. I'm not sure if he'll be able to do anything with it. He'll have a little bit of a look, but he'll know there's no pass on there. He'll tuck in behind him through the Ravazza corners, and his next best bet will probably Tosa the next time around, which will be on lap number 20 for those guys. Speaking of lap number 20, that's where we find Sam Smith and Xeris at the moment, with the gap between them still pretty far. I think Sam Smith has found his mojo. He's able to streak away a bit.
He's dropped into the 29s on the previous lap. Xeris did a 30.4, and no one else is anywhere near. Bad Apple did a 31.6, and Berto also in the 31s. But Sam Smith in an absolute class of his own right now. in the 29s. That's only 2/10 away from the fastest lap of the race that was set by Sam Smith.
Absolutely right. So Sam Smith really has come into his own in these Formula Classic vehicles around this 1988 version of the Imola circuit, and it's showing. He's almost 3.5 seconds ahead of Xeris now as he throws it into the Variante Bassa, as does Xeris. So I think Sam Smith has really got this chicane down to a T. He's not losing a huge amount of time.
Nope. I believe we've lost me.
Away throughout the
we're
rest
back.
of the race, and Xeris will have a fair chance at getting back up in P1. But at this stage, I'm starting to wonder if Xeris has just settled on his fate of finishing P2 and is just going to take home a nice big bag of points and continue on the series as he does without risking any more mistakes.
Apologies, viewers, for the breakup in pictures. I believe we just had a momentary connection drop, but it appears that we are back. Unfortunately.
And Birdo is back into P5. He's just gone around the outside of Nether into the first Bravazza corner, and that's a fantastic move from Birdo. So he's already pulled a gap of about half a second on the run into the Variante Bassa, and that's a fantastic move from Birdo on Nether there.
Yeah, just catching an action replay now of that move from Birdo, getting his nose up the inside. Nether trying to, on the outside. Nether trying to force the issue on the inside. And Birdo drives clean around the outside. Very much the place to be if you're trying to make a pass today is the outside.
Yeah, which is strange because there's a lot of marbles developing on the outside of these corners around this circuit, so you wouldn't think there'd be a huge amount of grip there. The track is progressing at an accelerated rate as it normally would in real life, so we're seeing quite a lot of rubber appearing on the sides of this circuit. Of course, these tyres are still fairly firm bits of rubber. You know, they're designed to last generally for a whole race, as you mentioned earlier. And with us running half race distance, we've run twice the degradation on these tyres, so they should be able to get these guys to the end of the race, bar any unfortunate lockups and flat spotting.
So,
But it looks
Sam
like the
Smith,
most part of the... Sorry, go on.
yeah, I was just going to say, Sam Smith, again in the 29s on the previous lap, 29.8, and Xeris unable to respond, it would appear.
Yeah, it seems to be that way. So I'm beginning to wonder at this point if Xeris has just decided to settle for second position.
Well, it would be a surprise to me if he did do that. Maybe his tyres are going away from him a little bit. And Sam Smith has just got the car under him to keep going, banging out those lap times. 2/3 race distance now. Well, just past 8 laps to go. And Sam Smith well on his way. Holds down a 3-second advantage over Xeris.
So, at the moment, there's not a huge amount of particularly close battles I can see on track at the moment. I think the closest thing we have is Nether, who is still 4 seconds off the back of Birdo, but Birdo is pushing that gap out quite a lot as he goes around. Of course, he had a lot more pace than Nether when he passed him a couple laps ago on the outside at Ravazza. So he's now just under 8 seconds off the back of Madbird in 4th position. Not sure if he's going to be able to do that. He's going to have to find a second on him every lap all the way to the finish, and that's not something that I think is super achievable. So, bar any mistakes from either of those drivers, I think those positions are pretty much set in stone. We've got a few cars at the back, the Stragglers, of course, who are making up the lap traffic, who have also pitted out and are just sort of battling to lap and then unlap themselves. As we see Sam Smith now approaching the back of Josh Bagsy, who sits in 9th position, a lap down off the lead. About to be 2 laps down off the lead, with Xeris just under 3 seconds behind Sam Smith. So the gap between those two widened a little bit and has narrowed down once again now that Xeris is heading through the Aqua Minerale chicane. He's having a couple of lockups here and there, so that might be eating into his tyres a little bit.
Bagsy never made it easy for Sam Smith to get past him. Forced him to drive around the outside of him there. But in the end, Sam Smith does it without losing any time. Slow by his standards on the previous lap, did a 30.3, but he still gained another 0.3 of a second on Xeris on the previous lap.
Oh, we just had a big development in the battle for 5th position. I think Birdo's made an error somewhere, and now Nether is all over the back of him.
Watching that battle now, so Nether is all in the slipstream of Birdo, and he's going to try the same move down the inside at Tosa. I don't think he got his car quite up alongside. Birdo gave him the room. Nether didn't get his nose chopped off, and in the end loses a little bit on traction coming out of the corner. and he'll try again. So I wonder what happened to Berto there. We'll see if we can go back and catch a replay, see if Berto made a mistake, and he appears to have made a bit of an error at the Variante Bassa, and that's a big impact with the wall. So 50% damage. That car will be handling quite, it won't be handling too well.
It's a bit of an error, right? It's a massive error, but somehow he's not got very much damage to his front wing at all. There's a little bit of a dent in his right end plate, but apart from that, he's still trucking along quite well. He's doing his best to hold off Nether as a... sorry, I'm just looking at the replay of that maneuver again. Sorry, they're going into Ravazza now, so Berto...
Berto's
he runs
off
it very
at
right.
the Ravazza, so that car's struggling to brake. Car has... the tyres have dirt all over them right now, but I certainly think that that off-track excursion there was a result of the previous off-track excursion, and now we have yet another moment there for Berto. It's just one of those things that compounds on you. Once the car is damaged, you make another mistake. Now he's got very bad flat spots, and Nether is well clear now, 6 seconds up the road.
If he keeps this up, he's going to need his passport so he can get it to San Marino. That's how far off the track he's getting at this stage. So he's able to keep on at the moment, but I definitely think there is some damage resulting from that impact that he had with the wall. So that's a real shame for Berto. He's losing a lot of pace there. It looks like he's got a few flat spots in all his tyres, actually, from what I can see.
Yeah, that'll be rotating very, vibrating very, very rapidly, I should say, and knocking the fillings out of his teeth, to use a Brundleism. Another fastest lap of the race.
1:29.75 from Sam Smith, and he's 4.5 seconds ahead of Zero. So he is pulling all the stops out, and he's really giving it all the beans. So he may even turn up the boost a little bit there to try and get a little bit more of a gap on Zero at the end of the race, and Sam Smith is trucking.
Yeah, I mean, he's checking out. I was about to say unexpected Bagsy in the lapping area, but that's 4 seconds now that Sam Smith has over Xeris, and it's not very often that someone puts manners on Xeris like that. Although, having said that, he's just
Sam
gone
Smith
clouding over the curbs and has probably just disrupted his rhythm a little bit. Catch a replay.
Still got a nice hefty gap over Xeris, of course. Still just over 3.5 seconds to him, depending on what part of the track they're at. But as you have a look at the replay, he just really shot straight over the corner there at the Acqua Minerale section. So there's a little bit of time that Xeris is able to make up, but not a huge amount.
Apologies for the very, very jerky 1988 replay, but we are dealing with technology from that era. Looks like Berto's taken a tour of the pit lane. No, that's just lag. Very interesting there. The game showing me Berto driving through the pit lane, but then he teleported back onto the start-finish straight. Bit of netcode there from the Reza Studios.
Classic stitch up from our boys in Brazil.
Classic stitch up.
Lap 26 of 30, so we've got 5 laps to go, and we are at 5/6 race distance. Sam Smith leads the way by just under 4 seconds from Xeris, and that is not something I ever saw happening. We definitely predicted Xeris, or I definitely predicted Xeris to be streaking away as he was in the 1975 version of the race, and I think this is one of the few occasions where my predictions have gone awry. So obviously great for Sam Smith to see him doing so well. Hopefully he's able to maintain that, and I haven't put the commentator's cursor in. If I had any wood near me to knock on to make sure that didn't happen, I certainly would be knocking on said wood. But I can't find any, so I'm just going to cross my fingers and wish him the best of luck.
Yeah, well, as I was starting to pour the superlatives on him, say that he had checked out, and do all those sorts of wrapping up type commentary things. He bounced over the curb, so I'm a little bit reticent to do any more of that. But he is absolutely flying. He's had a bit of trouble getting past some of the lap traffic tonight, I think, but he's done well there. The lap car getting completely out of the way on the inside for Sam Smith. But Xeris actually gained back about a second on that previous lap, potentially just due to the traffic for Sam. Now Xeris has to negotiate, gets him at a very bad moment. Does Xeris.
Yeah, that's going to lose Xeris a bit of time as well. He was stuck behind him through the Variante Bassa, and now the gap is back out to 4.5 seconds. So Sam Smith has benefited well from the position that he found Tyrrell in the Minardi. Nope, he's in the Minardi, I think. Is he? Yes, I got it right. Well done, me. And Sam Smith came very close to rear-ending Rhodey there at Tosa.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been a popular move. So Rhodey now was just letting Xerus go through. A little bit of chatter between them in Discord, but Xerus is safely through. It's back out to about 3.3 seconds. Oh, Rhodey's gone spearing off the road in the background. I didn't see what happened there, but we just lost him from our pictures.
We just had Brenton Foley come out of the pit lane as well, so he's made a stop for whatever reason. I want to say it's due to suspension damage due to the way that car was sitting on the circuit before he stopped, but it may just be because of destroyed tyres as well, because there wasn't any obvious damage before he came in.
It was a big hit there for Rhodey, so he'll be nursing a bit of damage there. Currently sat in 11th place, but he will pick up a decent haul of points for that position. As it stands championship-wise, it is Xerus in the box seat with a first place and a second place, which would put him on 45 points. And then Sam Smith with fourth place and first place would be in second on 38 points, with podium sitters from last round, Goofball Antics, DNFing tonight, and Brenton Foley is all the way down in 10th place at the moment, although he's just made a place on Bagsy for 9th.
So it's really shaking up the championship just how far down the order these podium sitters from the last race are finding themselves. Brenton Foley being in 9th at the moment and Goofball Antics being in 12th. I did mention earlier that even finishing the race is good enough to score a decent haul of points, because I do believe we are still using the FIM MotoGP point scoring system, which pays all the way down to 15th, with 25 points for a win and 20 points for second place. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stairs.
You are correct, and the reason that we are using that is because it rewards consistency, and I think that is something that is much to be desired in this sort of racing. You don't want to see people throwing it in the fence just because they're down in 10th. You still want them to pick up a handy bunch of points for that. And some people may ask, why aren't we using the point system that was used in the real-life Formula One championships during those periods of time? Well, I think that would be a little bit unfair to the people winning the 1975 and 1990 and 1988 and even 2001 championships, because they had 10 points and 9 points for a win back in some of those years, and 25 points in 2019.
Back in the day, I think it was only the top 6 drivers who actually received points. It was 9 for a win, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. 7th position, lower than that, bad luck. You can't score any points. So that would have made it very tough for any of these guys to be able to put a substantial amount of score on the board. So we are using the same consistent point score for all 4 races, and I think that's very fair, as you mentioned.
That's it.
The gap now between Sam Smith and Xerus, mind you, is down to 2.2 seconds.
Yeah, I think Sam's trying to nurse at home here. He doesn't want to be too careful. We saw Brenton Foley do that in Place City Circuit in the Caterham Series, where he seemed to have had it won. But let's quickly go through the order before we start the final lap of this race to update you on your favourite driver. So Sam Smith leads the way by 2 seconds over Xerus in the Ferrari. Bad Apple in a stellar debut for Apex Rear Wing in the Osella will round out the podium in 3rd place, as long as we have no disasters for him. And Madbird just trying to lap Josh Bagsy, who got a drive-through penalty about half a lap ago. He's going in to serve it right now. He is in 4th place. Nether in 5th place has had a fighting drive up 2 spots and got that position on Berto a few laps ago when Berto had a few off-track excursions. He is the last man on the lead lap. Fruity Ping, in his return to, well, first race for Apex Rear Wing, but return to this group after many, many years, is going to finish in 7th place, ahead of Tyrrell, who was up in 7th, but had a few drive-through penalties, but is still going to get a decent haul of points for tonight's efforts. Brenton Foley is in at 9th place, just ahead of Josh Bagsy in 10th. So Brenton Foley must have had another off-track excursion, because Josh Bagsy has just served a drive-through penalty, and Foley was ahead of him before that anyway, so that's a bit interesting. They're both about to get lapped by Nether as well. Rhodey is in 11th place. Berto, incidentally, has just had an off-track excursion ahead of the race leader Sam Smith. We'll try and catch that in a few moments. And Goofball Antics is out of the race.
As you were talking about, Josh Bagsy there having a battle with Brenton Foley. It appears that he's spun on the exit of Tosa and hit the fence, so he's now 8 seconds behind Brenton Foley. And he's just received another drive-through penalty for absolutely straight lining the outer chicane and bouncing into the air.
So It was the exit of Tosa for Berto. Here is a replay of what happened, and that car is a bit damaged. Only took the slightest little bit of curb and spun the rears up, and around she went. He didn't lose a position out of that. He stays in 6th place. Oh, and we got Fruity Ping out of the Ravazza, spinning in front of the race leader. But Xeris has had some sort of moment on the previous lap because he has dropped to 9 seconds behind our race leader, Sam Smith, who's going to come through the Variante Bassa to win the second round of the 4 decades of Imola. And he's trying to make it close. I don't know why he's doing that, but he is nonetheless trying to make it look like he's won the race in the shortest possible amount of time. In the slowest possible amount of time, and it makes it a 1.9 second win in the end. But a terrific job all round from Sam Smith tonight.
So I was just looking at the replay there. I had to rewind quite a bit, and what happened was Xeris just got a little bit too hot on the exit of the Variante Alta chicane and spun off into the infield. So obviously relayed that into the chat, and Sam Smith thought, you know what, I'll be good and make this look nice for the screenshot for the Facebook post. So brought the gap back to just under 2 seconds between those two. And Bad Apple, in his Apex Rear Wing debut, has finished in 3rd position. What a race from Bad Apple. Well done.
Yeah, he's done a terrific job as we see him now touring on his in-lap. Oh, huge collision there with the car of Fruity Ping and one of the black and yellow cars. But Sam Smith in the middle of your picture there as he exits out to the pits has had a fantastic night tonight.
I'm just watching the car of Fruity Ping continue to motor around this circuit upside down due to the strange collision box that these vehicles have, and that the any space that is not including the wheels doesn't really collide with the racing surface. So Fruity Ping is currently circulating on his roof. So good on him. Well done. And he's finished the race in 7th position, and we now have some of the podium sitters joining us in the box stairs.
We do. So, well, where to start? We could start backwards, we could start forwards, but we'll probably start forwards since we have been joined by our race winner first. So, Sam Smith, what a terrific race from start to finish. You put Xeris under a huge amount of pressure at the beginning of that race. Looks like you forced the error, but it looked like you might struggle to get the job done in the early stages because you were faster than him in parts of the track where you couldn't quite get through.
Yeah, true. I was better down the straight, and there was a couple of sectors I was better, but he'd always get that final corner exit, and it would just offset. And I was just hoping he'd ride on those curves a bit more, but he just wouldn't really do it. He did it a couple of times, but just not enough.
So yeah, we saw you. We saw you lining up a move into Tosa before Xeris had that spin through the Variante Bassa chicane, I believe it was. My memory's a little bit fadey. So is that a move that you've been rehearsing in your mind for a little bit, that you were aiming to get nailed down at some point in the race?
Oh, it's just the usual, try and get in his mirrors and see what happens. He doesn't usually care about that, but yeah.
Well, very well done indeed. Sam Smith taking the win in race 2 and moving himself up to 2nd position in the championship standings. Great race from him. We move now to Xeris, who has had a couple of uncharacteristic mistakes there in that race, as we mentioned earlier, but was still able to bring it home in what ended up being an uncharacteristically close P2, because I think Sam Smith backed off there at the end. So, well done, Xeris. P2.
Thanks. It was bloody intense. Yeah, I think I was under a lot of pressure early in the race. The width of the cars really gets to me, I think, as well. So I was riding the curbs, and one of them did it and let him past. And then from there, I was just trying to really keep up with him. I could see through practice that he had quite a good pace, so I was just hoping to stay ahead of him for the whole race. And then, right towards the end, I got my groove on and started catching him. And of course, I slipped up and span, and that put the end of that.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate because, Stairs, we were talking about in the first half of the race how fantastic the battle was between these two drivers, and how different their abilities were in various parts of the track, weren't we?
Well, that we were, and you've actually thrown me a bit. I wasn't expecting you to throw it back to me, but yes, it was certainly. It is certainly hard to put Xeris under pressure. He doesn't, as you said, doesn't seem to, as I think Sam Smith said, doesn't seem to be too bothered by it. Relishes a battle, in fact. But Xeris, once he got by you and started setting those 29s, it looked like it was going to be very, very hard for you to catch back up. Even after initially it looked like he'd lost his carrot, he got himself into that rhythm, and at that point, did you think it was going to be possible to catch back up, or had you just sort of thought, well, he's found that rhythm now?
Well, I don't think I ever gave up. I just needed to get myself into a rhythm, which was what I was aiming to do. But it seemed every time I got onto the pace, I would hit the curb up the top and ruin it. I never really got into the groove, and Sam was just he was on pace the whole time.
Well, congratulations on taking away the championship lead, of course, or holding on to the championship lead, I should say, and congratulations to Sam Smith on a masterful victory tonight. Let's turn our attention now to third place man Bad Apple. First race in Apex Rear Wing, and a bit of a lonely one, but not bad to start off with a podium.
Thanks, mate. Was a bit of a lonely race. Messed up the start a bit. Banter kept me entertained, I'd say.
We weren't privy to too much of that during the race. So any little tidbits of funny banter that occurred that we might have missed out on the broadcast?
I can't recall anything. I was trying to keep the car on the road, but I know there was a lot of banter going on that was rather entertaining at the time.
Well, it obviously didn't distract you. You've driven a very clean race from what we could see. Of course, if there were any mistakes, we managed to avoid them because you're fairly on your own on the racetrack, so you're able to get yourself into a rhythm while everyone else was falling off the track.
Yeah, it was quite uneventful, thankfully. Anyway.
That's what you want. Well, that's our podium sitters. Matty, what did you make of tonight's action?
Well, every time we come to this post-race recap, I always say it was very unpredictable, and this time it certainly was. I was hoping for a battle between Sam Smith and Xeris all the way throughout, and it was really fantastic to watch in that first half, but the fact that Xeris made a couple of slip-ups there was completely unexpected. I've been poring over the statistics from Apex Rear Wing in history and seeing Xeris utterly dominating almost every aspect, and it was painting a picture of the infallible driver that was ultimately more or less shattered when he made a couple of slip-ups. I don't want to say shattered. It's a very dramatic way to put it, but yeah, it just goes to show that anything can happen in these events, especially when we're changing the cars in the circuit every 2 weeks. Yeah,
it can certainly favour some drivers one week and other drivers another week. But Sam Smith certainly on his night is unbeatable. Biggest surprise of tonight for me, I'd say Goofball Antics DNFing. What about you, Matty?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Goofball Antics has normally been pretty fantastic in whatever car you plonk him in, normally performing midfield at worst, but he just wasn't able to get to grips with this car. He did come into the practice session very late, so he missed out on a lot of running time and a lot of practice time as a result. So I think that's contributed to the reason why he wasn't able to perform at the level we were expecting. But it was a shame to see him so far down the order in the DNF position, of course, as well as Brenton Foley, who I think ended up in 9th. Brenton Foley, of course, has said in the past that he's not a big fan of wings and slicks, but he has shown himself to be pretty capable in almost any machinery. So it's thrown up some pretty strange results, and it's moved a few people up the order.
Well, we've got 2 rounds left. It's the half distance mark of the 4 decades of Imola, and next round will be the 2001 round. So we'll have traction control, pit stops, and a whole new can of worms.
Screaming V10s as well, and a slightly more varied version of the track. It's the first time we're going to see the chicanes at Tamburello and Villeneuve. So it's a brand new challenge for these guys to see how they handle it in the very, very grippy 2001 Formula 1 styled cars with the screaming V10 engines. I cannot wait for it, Stairs. I'll see you then.
Can't wait for it either. Don't miss that on the 20th of November. That's in 2 weeks' time. That's about all the time we have. Thank you to Matty for joining me once again in commentary. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.
Preview.